look into the detail and also come up with practical measures that we must take to address the priorities of the year as set out by the NEC. And given that this is an election year and also the end of the 6th term of the administration, our plans and proposals must speak to this reality. Another NEC Lekgotla will be held after the elections to assess the election victory results and concretize plans for the 7th administration. I'm glad you caught that one. The Lekgotla is also taking place whilst we are preparing for the 2024 election campaign and the release of our election manifesto, which will take place a few weeks from now. While much work has been done in developing the manifesto, including the process of extensive review that we embarked upon, the deliberations from this Lekgotla will need to sharpen the plans that we are going to put in place so that we can conclude the manifesto that we are going to put to the electorate. Unlike other parties, our deliberations are informed by experience, by the successes that we have achieved, and also by the lessons that we have learned in governance. For the last 30 years, the ANC has driven social and economic transformation, and over the last 5 years, we've been leading a very difficult and challenging process of recovery, of rebuilding, and of renewal. And these three elements have preoccupied what we have done in the past 5 years. We have made significant progress in addressing severe challenges and have initiated far-reaching reforms to grow and transform our economy, to create jobs, and to fight poverty as well. Not only do we need to maintain the momentum of change, but we also need to intensify our interventions and also deepen the impact of those interventions. These interventions must build a more equal society where no one lives in poverty. Amongst other things, this means that we need to improve the efficacy of measures to support the unemployed in our country. We need to create more jobs, including through public employment, social protection, and to have an active labor market system. Whilst government has been able to significant challenge remains that millions of working age adults in our country remain unemployed without any form of support and little prospect of gain picks up. We know that the special SRD grant that we introduced during COVID led to major reductions in food poverty. It is estimated that the grant in its current form has reduced the number of people living in extreme poverty by at least 2 million. There is therefore a strong case for a permanent form of a targeted income support grant for the unemployed within our fiscal constraints. Discussions should continue amongst us about what we have termed a basic income grant. To inject growth into the economy, we need to embark on a number of interventions, including more effective urban transport and housing policies that end apartheid spatial inequality and drive inclusion. The integration of transport systems and the densification of settlements into mixed zones has proven to be an enabler of economic opportunities around the world. We must therefore review existing housing policy to support densification closer to the economic nodes through, for example, the release of publicly owned land and provision of serviced stands with appropriate support. We must encourage greater integration between local, provincial, and national public transport systems and fast-track the return of key passenger rail corridors to service. This is currently underway after a long lull in the provision of passenger rail services. The Department of Transport is taking all efforts to return various corridors around the country to service once again. This means that we must intensify our work to complete the work towards competitive and efficient network industries. Our interventions must achieve a dynamic, growing, and inclusive economy. We must also increase our investment in gross capital formation, focusing on both social and investment type of infrastructure through innovative ways of funding. We should find ways in which we can work with the private capital to achieve growth in a number of sectors of our economy. Many of us will have noticed that when the Minister of Finance delivered his medium-term policy budget statement last year, Treasury did say that we will now raising funding for infrastructure projects, rather than to continuously rely on the. It was an absolute joy a week or so ago to be in the Northern Cape, where we were launching a housing project to build 4,500 houses, having embarked on what we call a test-driven new way of funding infrastructure, and may I say social infrastructure, where ordinarily it would have taken the Northern Cape up to 50 years to begin to address the backlog of building houses for our people. We've now embarked on a journey where we will be able to use the front-loading way of funding for social infrastructure and build infrastructure now and be able to go on financing it, and to also crowd in the financial institutions, the private sector, to participate in those funding interventions. What we are testing in the Northern Cape will now be rolled out to a whole number of areas around the country, meaning that our infrastructure build will really begin to take off, and we should see infrastructure installation beginning to happen in many parts of the country. And we thank the bravery and the courage and the foresight of the Premier of the Northern Cape, and very much for that, because we are now going to move forward. Now, in addition to the short-term measures required to address the immediate electricity that will fundamentally change South Africa's energy sector, we have already embarked on a journey of transforming our energy sector, which is going to stand our country in good stead. We must pursue these reforms with a clear purpose to ensure energy security and encourage far greater levels of fixed investment, which will be a critical driver of economic growth in the coming years. Similarly, improved efficiency in logistics can unlock the potential of the rest of the economy, as the cost of logistics affects all other sectors. The services which move goods and people should be provided in a safe, efficient, and cost-effective manner, and designed to promote economic growth and to eradicate economic inequality as well. Now, to address severe inefficiencies in this sector, government recently adopted the Freight Logistics Roadmap. And this roadmap was crafted together with labor, together with the business community, all of them working in their various subsectors of the logistics sector of the economy. We must ensure the timely implementation of the measures that are contained in the roadmap to fundamentally transform the country's freight logistics system. This will ensure that port and rail infrastructure remains state-owned while introducing private sector participation and competition in operations to significantly increase the volume of goods that can be transported for export. This improvement of our ports will also heighten our capacity when it comes to taking up opportunities that are being given rise to by the crises that are happening globally. As sea transportation faces challenges in the Red Sea, a number of companies are now diverting the ships that normally go through the Red Sea right around our Cape of Good Hope. And through this, we are then able to take advantage of bunkering services, port services, and they are coming in their thousands and thousands. And that will inject a great deal of growth into our economy. So that is where the roadmap on logistics is going to stand us in good stead. The great potential for job creation lies in small businesses and also in the informal sector. All over the world, in many countries, it is the small business sector that drives the economies of various countries, and that is the biggest job creator. In your more developed economies, small business sector contributes upwards of 60 to 65 or 70% of job creation. So should it also be here with us. We need to focus on unlocking growth in informal employment by, for example, for small business, by removing restrictions on their trading, informal or formal trading, by removing and reducing the cost of trading permits for informal businesses and expanding banking and non-banking lending for small businesses. And this is where we also call on the financial sector to be much more creative in funding small, medium enterprises. We found that the conditions that are set for small, medium enterprises become so stringent by the financial sector that in the end they find no capital becoming available for their businesses. It is in this area where we need to open up greater opportunities for the small, medium enterprise sector. We also need to create a thriving startup ecosystem in our country by leveraging our existing strength, such as high-quality broadband infrastructure, which is continuously being strengthened, the strong capital markets, and a deep talent pool. We should also be implementing changes to encourage and attract the growth of venture capital funding and be able to incentivize startup founders to locate their operations in our country. We need to focus on growing the small business sector in an exponential way. This Lekgotla will need to spend time discussing the very real impact that climate change is having on many aspects of our daily lives. Climate change, loss of biodiversity, and the environmental pollution are amongst the key risks to the sustainable development of our country and our commitment to overcoming the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Our country continues to be adversely exposed to the effects of climate change, ongoing floods, particularly affecting provinces on the eastern border of our country, but fires affecting the Free State, Northwest, as well as Western Cape. These are all the after effects of the climate change challenge and crisis we face. Because of the threat of climate change poses to individual and community well-being, we must ensure that parliamentary processes to pass the climate bill are concluded by the end of this term. We need this legal instrument to ensure all levels of government mainstream building climate resilience and implement their climate change adaptation plans with greater speed. We must promote our just transition to a lower carbon economy and climate resilient society in line with our international commitments to reduce carbon emissions at a pace our country can afford and that leaves no one behind. We recognize that our country has significant advantages when it comes to building green industries, including what is known as minerals of the future, such as platinum, lithium, magnesium, as well as abundant renewable energy sources. Our national chairperson and the Premier of the Northern Cape are currently this minute in discussions with some potential investors about investing in our green energy opportunities in the Northern Cape. This means that this is a great endowment that we need to exploit to good effect. In fact, South Africa should take up the position of leadership when it comes to the green economy. This demands of us to focus on the development of new green industries so that we have new investments for new employment and ownership in the green industrial space. The transformation of our economy, the reduction of inequality and the creation of decent jobs into the future requires an education system that supports skills and productivity. We take to heart the words of the first president of our republic, Nelson Mandela, who said that no country can really develop unless its citizens are educated. That proves to be true for many countries that have surged ahead with development. The matric pass rate of 82.9% for 2023 is a testament to the consistent and commendable progress we have made over the last decade from 78% in 2022 to 80%, from 78% 10 years ago, to 80% in 2022. This shows how education has become more accessible and more equal to the majority of our people. And this is a great and significant achievement which we should all be pleased with. Now, the overriding priority should now be to dramatically improve literacy and numeracy outcomes for primary school learners and achieve universal coverage of early childhood development. As we focus more and more on early childhood development, we begin to see the great improvement that we are seeing. Minister of Basic Education, Comrade Angie Motshekga, tells me that in large measure, these results are based on having started grade R some 10 or 12 years ago. That the cohort that we are seeing coming through with such really good results, it's because of the grade R process that we started. I must confess that we started rather late with grade RR and even below, with early childhood development. And I'm confident that as we roll out more and more early childhood development, having transferred early childhood development from social development to basic education, we should be able to see a sea change, as the best time to educate a child is when they are at their youngest. Other countries, I'm told, like Finland, start with the early child development at something like 6 months or so. And this is the way that we should be going. So more and more we will gain traction. And as we gain traction, we will also begin to see the results getting better than what we have achieved now. A fundamental shift is required in the model used by TVET and other TVET colleges and other skills development institutions to link funding more closely to employment outcomes. Improving the quality of public health care delivery is vital to the well-being of our people. The effective establishment of the National Health Insurance, NHI, is therefore necessary to address the extreme inefficiency in healthcare spending. The NHI is a critical instrument for improving the health of all South Africans and thereby contributing to the reduction of poverty, improved productivity, and inclusive economic growth. The implementation of the NHI requires an immediate and sustained focus on improving the quality of service delivery and patient outcomes in the public health system as well as in the private system. We must build a safe and secure environment for all South Africans. This requires capable, sophisticated, and independent law enforcement agencies which can fight complex and organized crime, as well as greater attention being paid to the socio-economic determinants of crime as part of an effective prevention strategy. Sufficient progress has already been made in restoring the integrity and independence of law enforcement agencies. These agencies should be given the resources and the powers that they need to implement their mandates and to implement them effectively, with priority being given to the establishment, for instance, of the Independent Directorate as a permanent anti-corruption agency and the development of sophisticated forensic capabilities. All of these measures must be underpinned by a capable state that has a cohort of professional, dedicated civil servants with the skills and resources to deliver comprehensive services to all citizens in our country, and also have the capability of maintaining public infrastructure. We need to harness the power of artificial intelligence and technology to develop modern digital public infrastructure and services that support more effective development. A capable developmental state will not be possible without insisting on accountability across all parts of the state, and indeed across institutions of society. It should be that every person who is given a task in the service of our people must perform that task diligently and to their best of their capability. They must feel bound by the responsibility they've been given and must be prepared to face the consequences of poor performance or even any acts of impropriety or malfeasance. Local government is a vital part of a capable state, yet many municipalities across the country continue to experience financial as well as operational crises. Bold and urgent intervention is needed to improve local government service delivery. To date, interventions have been disparate and poorly coordinated with limited effect. We need to improve the outcomes of our local government entities. When the Auditor General issues her reports, she always finds that many of our municipalities have huge shortcomings, and many of them have become dysfunctional. Through initiatives such as the District Development Model, we aim to achieve better integrated planning, which should help us to address the lack of capacity or governance failures at many municipalities. We require a coherent, integrated, and comprehensive plan to address local government challenges, without which economic growth will be constrained by the inability to provide essential services and also to enhance economic growth. Now, in pursuit of our historic mission as the ANC and in fulfillment of the principles of our democratic constitution, we must prioritize the building of a cohesive and united nation. And we must therefore restore a sense of common national identity centered on our constitution and work towards social cohesion as well as stability. We have always understood that the transformation of our society and the prosperity of our people cannot be separated from the fortunes of the other nations and especially our continent. We have therefore consistently striven for a better Africa and a better world. And the key pillars of our foreign policy since the advent of democracy include the pursuit of our national interests, the promotion of human rights, peace and stability, and the strengthening of trade and investment ties with other countries around the world. South Africa's image in the world has been raised exponentially over the past few years and has emerged as the voice of the African agenda, South-South cooperation, North-South dialogue, global multilateral governance, and economic institutions reform. It was in pursuit of our solidarity on human rights with the people of Palestine that compelled us to take Israel to the International Court so that the court could hear and listen to the plight and suffering of the people of Palestine. The decision made by the International Court of Justice on the 26th of January vindicates the step that was taken by our country, but also vindicates the international system of just law. It restores faith in international institutions to defend the rights of the most vulnerable. The International Court of Justice ruled that the State of Israel shall, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on Genocide, take all measures within its power to prevent the killings of members of the Palestinian group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to Palestinians, deliberately inflicting on Palestinians conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction, in whole or in part, and imposing measures intended to prevent births of Palestinian children. The court further ruled that the State of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any acts that are set out above. And this is a profound finding against another country. But we were compelled, in keeping with our human rights tradition, to embark on this measure. On the issue of humanitarian assistance, which has been lacking in Gaza, the court ruled that the State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of the life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The court further directed the State of Israel to take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to the allegations. The next steps, therefore, will see us turning to the structures meant to oversee this, starting with the United Nations Security Council, and of course, a number of other agencies as well. Our efforts to push for the United Nations Security Council's reform have been consistent that it must become a forum where all have an equal voice, where the interests of all have equal weight. As South Africa, we have continued to chant this message about the reform of that structure. Our work to stop genocide in Palestine will therefore not just continue in the International Court of Justice, where we are now preparing the case on the merits to show proof of genocide. It must and will continue on the political front in the UN, but also in seeking practical support to our ICJ case from other countries around the world. And it is that a number of countries have been ready, willing, and prepared to join small and little South Africa in this case. Through our commitment to our principles, our policy decisions, we have garnered respect and appreciation in the international arena. We must be consistent in this work, whether we speak of the Rohingya in Myanmar or in our calls for peaceful resolution of the Ukraine-Russia conflict or the blatant abuse of human rights against any people anywhere in the world. Our support for the struggles of the people of Western Sahara continues unabated, so does our support for the lifting of the blockade against Cuba as well. We need to discuss how we give effect to these principles in a challenging and dynamic global environment in which there are both great risks and many opportunities. And I must say that the risks abound, but there are also a number of opportunities. Progressive Lekgotla that we have held in the past have asked you to develop concrete programs with measurable objectives, as well as targets, to strengthen how the ANC-led government addresses the needs of our people. I've often said that as a Lekgotla, which is represented here by many of our formations, as in the Alliance, and also by a number of you who are deployees, this really constitutes the brains trust of our country. And in the end, the key question for this Lekgotla is how to strengthen our movement and the ANC-led government so that it can better serve the people of our people in the remaining period of this sixth administration, but also to begin to get us to raise our gaze to the seventh administration, where we are, without any doubt, going to be the governing party once again. And we should be clear and concise in our discussions, and, may I add, develop realistic programs with measurable targets. Let us ensure that our discussions are grounded in the people's concerns and that they have regard to the needs of women, young people, and rural communities who are often relegated to the back. At all times, let us keep in mind that our objectives for 2024 are to be united in action, to defend our freedom, and to once again advance to a better life for all. The notion of advancing to a better life for all has been our remit for the last 30 years, and it continues to be so. Having improved the lives of our people for the last 30 years, we must admit that our job is not done yet. We have the experience, we have the capability, and our people expect us to utilize the experience and the lessons we have learned to continue improving their lives. Let us get on with it. Thank you very much.